the 1970s Superman tagline was "You'll really believe a man can fly."
Mm-hmm.
Is this one "You'll really believe"?
I always thought when I was a kid, I saw that tagline and I watched the trailers, that it was just a joke. Because you got this bloke like softly floating along with puffy clouds behind him and everything. I do think that in terms of believing that the individual is one, capable of flight, and two, is actually flying, is pushed a lot more in this film.
Because you probably wouldn't accept that telling of the 1970s version today.
Mm-hmm.
Why do cinema audiences now crave realism over escapism?
I don't know, man, but that is a big question, and that goes across the board and everything. Where it just seems to be that, like, novelists are now disrespected in a certain way for coming up with incredible fiction, and just the same that I get a certain level of criticism because I don't have my own chariot. Walk around solving mathematical problems for people. It does seem a very odd thing where we're pushing towards this thing where fiction and the ability to transform yourself into a character or whatever is kind of somehow seen as you tricking people.
If it was more fictional and more like the 70s, 80s version, and you get the script and they fly people in with it, don't they lock you in a room, if you'd read it on that morning, would you have said no? Did it have to be this darker, more realistic telling of the situation?
Well, see, I don't see this as darker. I see, I understand that, the Batman franchise was definitely much darker than any Batman that's been. But I actually see this as having more hope, and more sort of essential truth to it, But obviously, Henry doesn't fly. It's still a construct. But it is an interesting thing that you brought up before across society that, and we see it more and more with reality TV and in various forms. But it seems to me to be strange that the imagination is being sort of put aside, or put down.
Let's talk about Henry, because it's big shoes to fill.
Mm-hmm.
He's a Brit as well, so we've got an added vested interest in Henry. How is he?
He was great. He, people don't fully understand the amount of pressure there's on in a job like this, and that pressure is continuous and is day after day. And I think they ended up shooting for 8 months or more, and he had a 5 or 6 month preparation period before that. So the fact that he was able to keep himself in the pocket and stay disciplined, keep his body together, because it sort of cost him, one pork chop and you've just ruined the day's shooting, So, and that's difficult, man, when you're doing stuff that requires such physical effort, to not be able to then like fill your tank, again, with fuel. It's hard, and I never heard a single word of complaint out of Henry. He's got some inner steel of his own, that's for sure.
And just finally, there's a great story that you actually met Henry on a school field 12, 13 years ago,
mm-hmm.
And you sent him a note and a picture.
Mm-hmm.
Do you actually remember him? That kid?
I do.
You did?
I do. It was one of those moments that, exists somewhere in the midst of your mind, until it's brought back to focus. And, it was 2000, I was making Proof of Life. There was a kid playing my son, a guy called Merlin Hanbury Tennyson. We were doing this scene where, as this sort of mercenary stroke soldier, I have to tell him that, yet again, I'm not going to be around for some important days in his life because I have another job to do overseas. And the backdrop to that scene was a rugby game. And there was one player on that field who was very fluid and very much in control. So he caught my eye because it's a sport that I really enjoy, And then later in between shots, that kid, the one who was the good player, or the one, there's many good players on the field probably, but he was just standing out in the moment. He came over to talk to me, But his questions were about acting. And there was just something about the way he was asking me the questions which made me take him seriously in that moment. And then when we finished shooting, I put together this package for the kid playing my son, because I figured if you're at boarding school, the greatest thing that you can get is unexpected mail. And I thought, I'll put one together for that other kid as well. So cut to 12 years later, and I'm in a gym in Illinois working out, and I keep thinking that the guy working out on the other side of the gym from me is somebody that I know, you know, and I know I'm getting to know him every day. I say good morning. We go to the, you know, the gym, which is basically our factory at that point, you know, and it was probably 3 months into it. I asked him, "Do I know you?" And he said, "Do you remember going to Stowe?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you remember a kid coming to talk to you?" And it just flushed through me, like, you know, those sort of memories do. It's like, absolutely. And I could recall everything about the conversation immediately. So just to check that he wasn't BSing me, you know, I said, "What did I say?" And he told me what I said, which was, you know, the first thing I said to him when he asked me, you know, "So what's it like being an actor?" And I said to him, "Well, they pay you pretty well, but they treat you like shit." And that's what he recalled.
And there he is. It's great when life comes full circle like that.
Yeah, well, you know, in this job, you know, those karmic circles are afforded to you. You know, in 1970, I was an extra in a TV show. I had one line of dialogue, and for whatever reason, every time they called action, I couldn't say my line. I was so scared. I couldn't say that line of dialogue. And there was an actor I was working with whose name was Jack Thompson, a very famous, wonderful Australian actor. And you know, I get to that point every time in the scene I couldn't say my line. My line was, "It's my ankle," right? So on the third take or whatever, and I'm not talking, you know, Jack Thompson goes, "It must be his knee." And I said, "No, it's my ankle." Cut, print, moving on. 23 years later, I do a movie called The Summer Bus where he's playing my dad, you know. So it's a funny sort of thing in this business. These karmic circles are more prevalent than not.
Lovely. Russell, pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers, man.
Thank
Look
you.
after yourself.